One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ladies Tale podcast. I just have to tell you guys, this is what happened. I said and one, and then I started with hello, everyone, and welcome to, and I was immediately about to be like, I'm thirsty. I was thirsty before I started the countdown. I don't know why I didn't be like, hold on, let me get a sip of water. So now that I've started, I'm not going to just sit here and drink water because it's not a name brand cup, so it wouldn't even look cute on the show. That might have been too much of an explanation for a joke. I hear that if you have to explain a joke, it's not funny. So that was the punchline. Yeah, no, that fell flat. Anyway, I have no other jokes today. And I can't talk about how cute I am because we have like a TV producer on and he's seen cuter people with his eyes closed with his hands tied behind his back. I'm like, no, she's adorable. She's definitely cuter than the host. Oh, see, that was a punchline I did not have to explain. What? High five to me? Oh, I'm Winona, which deserves another high five because I forget to introduce myself. And anyway, I occasionally wrote books with my co-author, who is now missing. See, no co-author here. Jade. And we wrote, and I thought divorce was bad, and I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me, a memoir in verse, Widows Web, Widows Debt, and Foreign Coffee. That's 6 books if you're counting. You know I'm about to do the whole mathematics thing. And I'm going to add a little sign language in there. See, I already started adding. So if you were counting, that was 6 books, and you can get those wherever your audio books are able to be purchased. And then, you know, we have to have another 11 books out there because, I mean, come on. It's like a baker's dozen plus a few more. And no, none of them are free. But anyway, 6 plus 11, which equals 17 books. That's sign language for 17, which I do every time. So if you don't know 17 by now, just go back and rewatch the rest. And then you can learn 17. Okay. You can find all those books on www.andithoughladies.com. Oh, yeah. You know I'm doing it again, because if Jade's not here, then I'm pulling out the car salesman voice. You can find all those books on www.andithoughladies.com. Oh, that feels so good to the soul. But you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guest. Wonderful guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hello there. I am Dan Greenberger, and I am a TV writer and producer in beautiful Los Angeles, California. We were just comparing notes on the state of our respective weather today. It's beautiful today in LA because it's always beautiful. It's kind of a crime if it's not beautiful, but it's lovely today. But yes, I've been writing for TV for a good 20-25 years. And I recently published my first novel, which is actually on a shelf behind me. I would be foolish if I didn't at least hold it up so that everybody can see just how beautiful well, of course it's all backwards, but if any of you have a mirror that you can hold up and read it, that's the book. So it's about the Beatles. It's about the early days of the Beatles. And I'm one of those crazy Beatle fans that knows everything about the band. You know, what did John Lennon eat for breakfast on May 23rd, 1967? I could tell you that. It's kind of amazing how much has been written about the Beatles, and I of course had to add to the pile by adding yet another one, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing this, and it's really it's become kind of a beloved book among Beatle fanatics because it is very much aimed at Beatle fanatics, and so it's been a really great experience for me.
So I have to ask you the question that I ask all producers or writers who have written a book. What skills from writing TV transferred?
That's a really good question because this was my first one. And going into it, I thought, I don't know how to write a novel. I mean, I know how to write dialogue. You know, I've written a lot of screenplays, a lot of TV scripts. And what I did actually, which I think, you know, was very clever of me, is that I wrote it in epistolary form. You know, it's a series of letters and journal entries. And that really made it a lot easier for me because I thought, okay, I don't know if I know how to write a novel, but I know how to write a letter. So I'll start with writing a letter. You know, it's about a kid who's doing a semester abroad in Germany in 1960, which is where the Beatles kind of started their career. And he ends up living, you know, next door to this loud, annoying rock and roll band from the north of England, and he just hates them. And at first, and eventually he comes to sort of fall into their orbit and everything. So a lot of the letters home are like, oh my God, these guys are driving me crazy. I mean, with their music, and it's so loud, and they're just laughing, and my God, how did this happen? And so anyway, that helped as far as getting over the hurdle of just, you know, tackling a novel. But as far as, you know, telling a story, I think those, you know, a lot of those same elements do apply. I found with the book that this novel does have a very traditional 3-act structure, which is something that really gets drilled into you when you do scripts. And I'm sure there are plenty of really great novels that do not have that. But again, that was kind of a thing that I was comfortable with and I was used to, and it's sort of how I know how to tell a story. So that was very important. Yeah.
I always find it fun when reading a book that has been written by someone in television is that you guys always have a great pace.
A great pace.
Pace. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so sometimes when you're a novelist, you can tell that the novelist really was enjoying their craft. And it gets a bit wordy and a bit dull. But like TV writers always keep it like, oh, this was nice, but let's keep going. And I want to thank you guys for doing that. It's always so enjoyable. It's like, yeah, this is not a book I like. This is a book I like, but the pace of it means I love it. I love it. So
yeah, and no, and I think that's really true because, you know, one of the great lessons that I learned in writing for the screen is the question that you always have to keep in your head is, okay, what happens next? You know, and it's not thoughts and, you know, kind of philosophizing and deep thinking. It's okay, this happened, then this happens, then this happens. And in writing the book, I had the help of a really, really talented editor in New York, who I met through a friend of mine. And when I sent her the first draft of the book, she kept writing back and saying, okay, but what is he feeling at this point? And, you know, that was not my inclination to have him stop and think about why he's doing something. Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling hurt? But that was just a great note because it really added a ton of texture and emotion and depth to it. Because yeah, I think there is a temptation if you write this happened, then this happened, then this happened, that yeah, you do have a great pace, but a lot of times there won't be, you know, a great deal of resonance there. So I think this editor really helped me with that.
you stole my next question. Thank you for the answer. I feel like I should ask the question.
I knew.
Oh my goodness, because I remember one of our friends who's a director in Hollywood. She was saying that she wrote her first book over COVID, while COVID lockdown was happening, and she was like, it was so funny because all of a sudden I'm writing, and then first of all, I finished my, you know, my amount like 100 and some pages because she writes feature films. And she was like, and then I'm like, wait, how many more pages do I have to go? And then she's like, and then secondly, I get to say like what they're thinking and what they're seeing and their perspective. And that's not something you add to scripts that often.
Right.
So what was it like to have that freedom to kind of like play with the artistry?
Yeah, that was it was daunting at first because, you know, again, when I get these notes about, okay, well, how does he feel about this? And, you know, even in my normal life, I'm not a terribly inward looking person. You know, a lot of times I don't even know how I feel about something. So it was really interesting to stop and think, what would he be feeling at this point? And and yeah, so that made it. I'm sorry. Your question was about like
What
was
was it
that?
like to have the freedom? Because
Oh, right.
before you said like it's mostly
Yeah.
dialogue, but now you have freedom. Yes.
Right. So yeah, filling in all those details, as far as emotions and feelings and all that. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. And it made me kind of look forward to writing the next one because I can, sort of think in that way. And you kind of turn on another part of your brain and not just the line of plot, which is so pronounced in screenplay.
I'm proud of myself. I revamped that question I was going to ask and had you answer it anyway. I feel so proud of me.
Well played, well played.
So, if you had to reverse engineer your novel into a screenplay, where would you start and how would you do it?
That's a very good question, and I'm hoping that I get a chance to do that because I would love it if somebody gobbled this up for and turned it into a film. Um, the one thing that kind of gives me a little pause about it is that it is about four real people, the Beatles. And people know what the Beatles looked like and sounded like. And I'm a little worried that if they saw somebody doing like a bad imitation, hello, I'm a Beatle, and they would, I would just roll my eyes and go, oh my God, he's not even doing the voice right. Um, but as far as the story itself, yeah, it's really tough because that's another thing that I've never done. I've never adapted even someone else's book into a film. Um, I think I actually did it once a long, long time ago, and I didn't do a very good job at it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a matter of getting as much visually as you possibly can, because that tends to be. I know that's often a problem with turning books into movies. That a movie really is a visual medium, and a lot of writers, I think, who have spent their lives, writing novels, that's a hard lesson to learn. Um, with me being the opposite, like I say, I had to kind of learn the opposite in order to write it as a novel. So then going from the novel back to a screenplay, I think my head would probably explode, basically.
Oh, I tell all of my friends who want to make a screenplay out of their novel, but I'm not good. I am not good in any way, shape, or form of adapting a novel into a screenplay, but I can make it happen. Not well, but it can happen. It's always like, first of all, take everything you love about it out and then just find 3 points. And if those 3 points don't happen, it doesn't make the story work at all. And then they all go, that's so hard. And I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. Don't do it
And
then. I'll try to figure it out for you.
and I'm guessing those 3 points would kind of correspond to the 3 acts. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, clearly now I've found the person who could adapt this into a screenplay. So let's get going.
Oh, and then I have a script editor that does a really good job of making my screenplays even better. And I pay her after I get done. Woo, yeah, because those ones don't. I mean, I write them and then she makes them amazing. I'm like, look at that.
Yeah, no, that is. It is the nicest thing. And, you hear in Hollywood, especially, you hear a lot of people, and including me, complaining about, oh, I got notes from the producer and they're really stupid. And the director just doesn't get it. And God, why can't they see why it's brilliant and how it's working? But when you find somebody who does that really well, oh my God, there's nothing better. It's just, because at a certain point with anything I've ever written, I just throw up my hands and go, God, I don't know if this works. I don't know if I'm any good at this. I suck. And then, yeah, like I had a script. It was a TV pilot, and I gave it to a friend of mine, an old friend of mine who's a big director. And he deals with this stuff all the time. And he just gave it one read and he said, okay, I think you can take these two scenes and turn that into one scene. Take this scene that's in the second act, move it into the first act. And just these like four little things. And I remember reading the notes and going, okay, sure. And okay, I did that one, did that one, I did that one. I read the script and I was like, oh my God, this works a million times better. And yeah, that's just the best. So yeah, if you can find somebody like that, hang on to it.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, unfortunately for me, like she's also a showrunner and a producer. So like when we go through the script, it's like production cost and the
Right.
viability of what it would look like in pilot season at the same
Right.
time.
Right.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, poor. Granted, I will never, ever, ever, ever take any of my screenplays and be like, oh, I want to try to pitch them. No. But that's a
Yeah.
great segue. And considering that we don't do segues on this show, give me 1 second. What? High five to me and segue dance and segue dance. Okay, done. Let's talk about your TV writing.
Let's talk about my TV writing.
Yes, you've written for a CBS. Can you tell us a bit about, first of all, your career, and then, yes, this is a Winona two-part question. Secondly, what it's like to be a writer in Hollywood, like the process.
Well, my career started out in theater. That was kind of my thing. I majored in theater in college, and then I got a master's in playwriting at Columbia. And so I was sort of kicking around the New York theater scene for a while after I graduated. And, I had plays done like off Broadway and off Broadway. And eventually in New York got into the TV business. I literally answered a want ad in a newspaper. I mean, that sounds like something from a previous century, which it actually is from a previous century. So I guess that's why it sounds like that. But that's how I got into the TV business. And it was working for Showtime. And it was a really great job because I would, like I was telling you before, they would fly me out to LA like 4 times a year. And I'd be sitting at my desk and my boss would call me in and say, yeah, I need someone to go interview Carl Reiner and produce a special on him. And Carl Reiner is like one of my childhood heroes. He was a comedy god for me. And so I'm like, God, yes, please. And then, okay, I need you to go to Austin, Texas, and hang out with Willie Nelson for a day and interview him and then do a special about him. And I was like, yes. So it was a great job. It wasn't actually screenwriting per se, because I wasn't working with actors. It was more like, show business profiles and magazine type pieces. But I wanted to get into the writing end of it. So I moved out here about 20 years ago. And I very quickly sort of got into the world of sitcoms, and very quickly landed a job on a very high profile sitcom at the time, which bombed miserably. And it was, I don't know if you remember a TV producer named Stephen Bochco. He was, he specialized in cop shows. He did NYPD Blue and Hill Street Blues and LA Law. I mean, he was really one of the great TV producers ever. And he briefly got into the world of comedy. And so I got on this show. It was called Public Morals. And it was about like the vice squad of the New York Police Department. And there's a division of the vice squad called the Public Morals Division. And it has to do a lot with like prostitution and gambling and things that are considered immoral. So the The show itself was pretty, it was pretty racy for a network show. It was on CBS. And the way that it kind of got killed, which is kind of ironic looking back on it, is that we shot a pilot for it. And, again, it had, it was a lot of prostitutes, a lot of jokes about prostitutes and sex trafficking and stuff like that. And that year, somebody like spoke out against it and said, I can't believe, that TV has come to doing something that is this objectionable and this morally reprehensible. And the person who did that was Bill Cosby, which is ironic. And I won't say any more about it, but he pretty much single-handedly killed the show, because at the time he was, America's favorite dad, and he was, the moral center of the TV universe. So it got a lot of really bad publicity from that. And anyway, so that one was done. I moved on and did another couple of kind of smaller shows. I did some sort of comedy shows. There was one called Talk Soup that ran for a long time. And then after a while of doing that, I eventually got into a completely different area of the business, which is kind of what I do now, where I do trailers for the shows rather than the shows themselves, which is, not as much fun as sort of putting on a show every week and doing it in front of an audience, but it lasts forever. Because if you're working on a show, which has happened to me many, many times, and it gets canceled, they just say, okay, that show's canceled, here's your next one. As opposed to if you're a writer on that show and the show is canceled and, you go another year or two without getting a job. In the trailer and promo business, you go a half an hour without a job, and then you get a new one. So it's really stable. And I do make, little comedy videos every day, and they're seen by millions of people. And so it has its, it has its compensation. So I do on one hand miss writing the shows themselves, but there is kind of a nice security to this other side of the business.
Sounds amazing. Someone who does trailers, that's all I would like to do myself.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
big business, and it's more and more. I mean, like when you look on Netflix and it's like, oh, should I watch this show? And they won't even ask you if you want to see the trailer. They'll just show you the trailer. And it's also interesting, again, you were asking about, what I learned from my other writing that I could put into this book. Talk about storytelling in a very economic way. If you've got 30 seconds to tell the story of not only an episode, but of an entire show, you really got to tell it. You got to cut to the chase. And you get very good at knowing, okay, what is really necessary to tell this story. So it's almost like, making miniature stories, rather than 90 minutes long, it's 90 seconds long. But you still got to tell a story, you still got to entertain the audience and get them interested and wanting to know what happens next.
That's amazing. I think that might be harder. It might be so much
Well,
harder. I think in our world we would call it paragraph flash fiction. So you tell the whole story in one paragraph.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah. And it's great. It really is good practice. I do think that has helped my writing, because I still write, pilots every now and then in the hope that one of them will get picked up and, run for 20 years. But and novels and all that. So yeah, it definitely it kind of sharpens your storytelling sense, even if you're not doing it in a very traditional way.
I love this. I love this a lot. I have never actually talked to anyone who does. Oh no, I have to take that back. did talk to someone who did promos before and trailers, but
Mm.
I enjoyed how you said it. They did not come at it at a writer's perspective, so that was very enjoyable. Thank you so much for saying that. Which then brings me back to your writing for novels. Oh wait, I lied. I just recognized you said you write pilots and you hope that they'll get picked up. Can you tell us a bit about the pilot process, and then I'll get back to your novel.
Well, yeah, it's I don't know that I'm an expert on it because I've never had anyone actually buy one of my pilots. So I would assume that when that happens, it opens up a whole new world of experience. But yeah,
Pilot writing. Just tell us about pilot writing. Then I apologize.
okay. Right. Well, I write mostly comedies. In fact, pretty much all comedy. And it's funny because I was just working on CBS had what they call their upfront presentation. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay. So it's where we see all the new shows and we have to do a trailer for it basically in order to sell it. So I was assigned a new comedy pilot, and I won't tell you what it's called because it wasn't all that good, and it ended up not getting picked up. And somebody asked me at one point, so is the new pilot any good? And I said, you know what? They're never any good. And I wouldn't say never, but in all my years of doing this at CBS, I could literally count on one hand the pilots that I've seen that I thought were really good from beginning to end. Now, a great showrunner can take a mediocre pilot and turn it into a great show. I mean, it happens all the time. Seinfeld is a famous example. Like the whole first season of that show was really not that great, but they got it. They figured it out. They figured out the characters. They figured out what makes the show work. But doing that, for a half-hour pilot, which is really, 22, 23 minutes, introducing characters, introducing a premise, introducing a tone, introducing relationships, and still making a compelling story all in 22 pages, it's really, really hard. You get as much of that as you possibly can. But like I say, in all the years I've been doing it for CBS, one or two that I thought, oh, this is a really good show.
I believe Jade always says it's hard, like when you start a series and for a book, when you're reading it, it's always hard because that first book is always, unless it's a standalone, then like otherwise the first book is really, really hard to get into because you have to develop everything. You have to tell them what's important, what's not important, why it's important, how it will continue to be important, and then make it so they still want to turn a page and still want to buy the next book. So I remember reading about pilots and I was like, oh my goodness. I now went back and watched pilots of every one of my favorite shows just to like appreciate the growth because it's interesting what is introduced and then what is.
Oh, it's really hard. In fact, I would say my fizz, and somebody was asking me, like when I brought this up to a friend of mine, they were asking me what the best pilot I've ever seen was, at least that I worked on at CBS. And the answer is kind of weird because it wasn't a great show, but do you remember a show called Kevin Can Wait? It was Kevin James, and the pilot was just really, really funny. Now, I think the reason why it worked so well is because we knew Kevin James already, and we knew his character because it was pretty much the same character from King of Queens, and it's who Kevin James is. He didn't have to introduce himself to the audience, but he knew who his character was. The writers knew exactly who he was, and it worked really, really well. And it's kind of the opposite of a lot of the great comedies where the pilot is bad and then the show gets good. In that case, the pilot was really good and the show kind of faded away a little bit.
All right, so now I promised we would get back to your novel. So what are the chances of the second novel? And if it's already started, when do you think you will be pitching it?
Well, I started a second novel. And it was really, really hard. I was trying to, what I really enjoyed about doing this one is that even though it's about the Beatles circa 1960, it was from the point of view of a college student. And so in writing that character, I was really kind of using myself and what I was like when I was a college student. And I was kind of insufferably pretentious. And that was
You are a
and that was
writer, yes, y'all are.
and so that was a thing that I really enjoyed about writing that book. It's because in Hollywood you really don't write about yourself very often. If you're hired to write for a show, they're not interested in who you are. They want, you write this character, this situation, go. So writing about myself, I found really, really fun and interesting. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write, my next novel is going to be all about me. And I went to an interesting junior high school, long time ago, in Evanston, Illinois, which is where I grew up. And it was actually one of the first schools in the country first public schools in the country that was integrated. And, this was like the 70s, I guess, early 70s. And so I was trying to write something about that experience. And I just find it very, very hard. The very polarized times that we live in. I just wasn't sure, and I'm still not really sure that anybody really wants to hear my take on racial relations circa 1975, and so I just found myself kind of getting scared of the topic, and I've kind of set it aside for the time being, and hopefully I'll get back to it at some point. But it's a tough subject, and I think especially, I mean, when you're white, I mean, it's like I think it's wonderful that African American people are getting the opportunity finally to tell their stories, and it's about time. And yes, it is a great thing for all of us. But I just find now that the idea of somebody wanting to hear, I don't know, I feel like there's just so many landmines in it for me to do. But at some point I'll come back to it. But for the time being, I kind of put that one aside.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today and to talk about your career, because it's been amazing, and I love the fact that you do trailers. I think that's one of the coolest things. But can you tell everyone where they can find your first book, and I don't know, maybe look at some of your older shows that you wrote on?
Sure. Well, this one is called The Boys Next Door. And again, here's the mirror image of it that we've mocked up in the digital lab. It's on Amazon. That's the easiest place to find it. And I've actually I'm kind of spitballing now for a sequel to it. And that's what, and I was going to ask you about that because everybody tells you, again, I'm a first-time novelist. And I've heard so many people say, well, of course, if you do well in your first one, you've got to write a sequel to it. And yes, but and I do have an idea for a sequel for it, but I'm not sure that I still want to be working with Beatles. I know it's a weird thing to say, but I don't know. Do you find that people do that all the time, that they're always looking to write a sequel?
Well, if someone loves the characters, most of the time the readers will definitely want to follow you into a second book to see what happens. I will talk a lot more about this after we finish recording, but I'll just glaze over real quick. Yeah, a lot of times, especially with those that are traditionally successful, they will definitely ask for a sequel to the book. And if not a sequel, to ask you to write a book that is similar to the book that you've already written. Granted, that always gets you stuck in the fact that you may or may not end up being that type of author for the rest of your career. So like you're at a lovely point right now where, you know, you get to make that decision about if you want to be that type of writer. So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting to think about, and yeah, that's another one that I'm kind of working on at the moment. But yeah, that one I think I know what it will be, and again, it's just a matter of when I sit
I'm
down.
going to be looking forward to it.
All right. Well, good. I will hold you to it, and you can
always
interview
happy to
me
read
all
second
about it.
All right. So where can they find if they want to read about you, more about you or your social media?
You know, there's a thing that I did a few years ago that was also very popular. It was kind of a web series that you can find on YouTube. It was called A Day in the Life of Your Cat. And the idea was, it's these two sort of hipster dudes who are just sitting on a couch, and they're just looking out the window all day, and they're just talking of this and that. And you eventually realize, oh, these are actually cats. And the things that they're concerned about are things that cats would be concerned about. And that one was very popular too, because everybody loves the Beatles, everybody loves cats. So it's a series of cat videos featuring human beings that you can find on YouTube. It's called A Day in the Life of Your Cat.
Please go look at that. By the way, it's very enjoyable. Even the pilot. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm going to do this in the most professional way I've done in a long time. I feel very professional right now. So I'm Winona, and I'm one of the And I Thought Ladies, and you can find everything that your ladies are up to at www.andithoughladies.com. Go down to the middle of the page. Yes, it moved from the bottom of the page to the middle of the page, and you can see the charities that we proudly support. We ask that you consider giving them a little help right now, because times are difficult for everyone, and we thank you in advance for that. Remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the Missing Jade. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.